Back in high school, before my parkour days, I was going through that phase where you question everything, but especially authority figures. Mostly this was because I didn't like the grown-ups telling me what to do. When I needed to be home, how much TV I could watch, typical rebellious teenager stuff. But my quest to undermine their authority led me through a fruitful examination of the philosophical foundations of knowledge. Since I've started peddling my wares here in this public marketplace of ideas, it's worthwhile to share a bit about my process. It seems like a good idea to understand where the ideas you're consuming come from, just like you want to know where the food you eat comes from, right?
Silent breed is people!
I know this philosophical groundwork stuff can be a bit abstract and heady, but I see it like training the fundamentals in parkour, balance and precisions and landings, before doing big epic moves. And this stuff is not for everybody. You can take what's useful and leave what's bunk. Just my rough working draft, my back of napkin epistemology, if you will. So back to my high school days, I started reading books on philosophy and critical thinking that really helped me sharpen how I process and apply information. I found this book called Constructing a Life Philosophy that explains how we all have an inner map of reality that we use to navigate the world. Here's how it works. We can't perceive everything in the world all at once. So our minds create an internal model or representation of reality. And we use this model to guide our thinking, decisions, and actions. When I'm visiting a friend's house for the first time, they might have to explain where the bathroom is. Or if I'm feeling more introverted, I'll just wander the house randomly until I find a room with a toilet. In the future, when I visit their house, I don't need to go searching because I've updated my inner map of reality with the location of their bathroom. Now, usually this map updating process happens automatically and we don't have to think about it. It's mostly subconscious. Neuroscientists have shown that most of what we perceive comes from inside our minds, from those representations, and not from external sensory data. For example, when I pay attention to my vision, I can notice that there's only a small central part of my field of view that's really detailed, and the rest is just kind of blurry. But when I'm going about my everyday life, it doesn't feel like I have tunnel vision. My brain uses all these fragmentary bits of data from my senses, plus memories from my past, to construct the experience of a whole seamless world. I read that 80% of visual perception is built from memory, internal representations, and only 20% from the live sensory input through the eyes. It's easy not to notice this happening because our brains do such a good job of merging it all together. Good job, brain! Now, optical illusions exploit this mental shortcut. Check this one out. If you keep your focus on the center of this image for more than a few seconds, you'll notice your perception of the surrounding pattern will heal itself to look like the center grid, when really it's a bunch of broken lines. Not only is the brain continuously constructing our perception of the world from our internal models, but also constructing beliefs and assumptions about more abstract things like, who am I? Does God exist? What is right and wrong? Does my cat hate me? The important stuff. We carry this set of beliefs and assumptions around with us into every situation where they color our perception and guide our behaviors. If you believe that your cat is secretly watching and judging you at all times, you'll behave differently than otherwise. Fluffy knows what you did. Most of the time, when our internal model matches the underlying reality, it guides us well. In fact, that's a pretty good working definition of truth. True knowledge is a mental representation that matches the underlying reality accurately, or at least is a functional approximation. You can have higher resolution and lower resolution models. Beginning parkour athletes often struggle with commitment because their model of their own abilities, like how far they can jump, is low resolution, whereas more experienced parkour athletes have a higher resolution models of their own skills and abilities, so they know confidently what's just at the edge of their skill level and is a good challenge. But it isn't always so simple. Sometimes our brain unconsciously bends our perception of reality to better match our pre-existing expectations and desires. This quirk of perception can actually lead us away from true understanding. Sometimes beginners in parkour have an inflated sense of their own abilities, so they might end up committing to a move that they're not really prepared for and end up getting hurt. Do you have one of those old friends from high school who keeps getting pulled into different multi-level marketing schemes? She really wants to believe that this next one will make her rich because the promise of easy money is so alluring. For the third time, Emily, I don't want to be a boss babe, and neither do all your friends, family, and acquaintances. Most mass shooters are motivated by ideologies, which are basically warped models of reality in their heads. So building an accurate model of the world matters. It can be life or death. These biases are like an optical illusion, except instead of misperceiving something visually, it's misbelieving something about reality. Now, why would our brain evolve to mislead us about reality? Wouldn't it always be adaptive to have an accurate understanding? Well, actually, not always. Some biases and illusions are just shortcuts in thinking to conserve mental time and energy. I'm not being lazy, I'm just conserving energy. Sometimes false beliefs can help to facilitate social cohesion or be a defense mechanism in times of severe suffering. Okay, so we can't completely remove bias from our perception, and we can never be 100% certain of any facts we're told. So how can we avoid errors in our model and make rational choices? Oh, I'm glad you asked. I've found this great opportunity where you can work from home, be your own boss, and get a sweet discount on all sorts of useful philosophical tools. Want to hear more about it? Kidding. But I have found some conceptual tools that seem pretty effective at correcting errors in our mental models. You can give them a try and decide for yourself. And here are 3 free samples. Number 1, I try to practice intellectual hospitality. When I encounter a new idea, especially if it contradicts my current worldview, I try not to reject it at first glance when it's still at the doorstep of my mind. I say, come on inside, little idea. Make yourself comfortable. And see how it plays with all the other ideas and perspectives rolling around up there. Sometimes, in order to try out a new perspective, I'll need to temporarily let go of my default worldview. Sort of like taking off my shoes in the shoe store in order to try on a new pair. For example, if my default worldview holds that it's sometimes ethical to kill and eat animals, then in order for me to fully understand the ethical perspective of a vegan, I need to temporarily relinquish my standard framework to really see the world from their point of view. And yes, even though I'm a pig farmer, I can definitely empathize with a vegan perspective, especially considering how most animals are treated in factory farms these days. I've noticed this is another one of those learned skills that isn't easy right away. First, I have to be aware that my model of reality is not reality itself. The map is not the territory. And maps need to be updated and improved. Another common obstacle to intellectual hospitality is when I attach my beliefs to my sense of identity, so that when my beliefs are challenged, it feels like a personal attack. This makes me interpret a disagreement as a battle or sports match that I need to win against the other side. That's how we do it for the gold! This same process can happen on a larger scale with group identities and create an in-group, out-group dynamic. The pressure to be accepted by our social in-group is really strong and really often interferes with our ability to think critically and make up our own minds. This process can sometimes lead to a dehumanization of a group of people, the out-group, in order to justify withholding basic respect and dignity from them, and strengthen the loyalty of the in-group. We've seen where this leads to many times in the past. Consider the witch hunts of the 15th century Europe that sent 50,000 people to be burned or hanged, at times for no greater offense than being albino, or being a rather stubborn widow living alone. Communities projected their fears and blamed their misfortunes on these poor individuals, simply because they dared to not fit in. This social behavior pattern of falling into an us versus them mentality is generally destructive to the free and open dialogue of differing worldviews that helps us to find our way towards the truth. We need to be able to look at many different maps of reality and overlay them one on top of the other to see where they line up and where there's discrepancies that need further investigation. This requires intellectual hospitality. So instead of a battle, it's treating each opposing viewpoint as an opportunity to learn and sharpen your understanding. I try to maintain the assumption that every idea and opinion could contain at least a grain of truth, and it's my job to find that grain. The scientific method of inquiry includes false starts, dead ends, and fringe theories as an absolutely essential part of the process. Many of the facts we consider common sense today, like the Earth revolving around the sun, began as a fringe theory. So we need to tolerate the fringe because although most of it is bullshit, all revolutionary ideas that give us a better model of reality usually begin in the fringes. But that does not mean that every fringe theory deserves equal airtime in public discourse. And a fringe theory of the universe by an expert physicist is of a different order than the fringe theory of some guy like me on YouTube, even if he's really good looking. Given all this, I would argue that the solution to misinformation is not censorship, but education and open dialogue. Okay, intellectual hospitality is tool number one for being a good mental map maker, a good cartographer of reality. Number two, there are a bunch of common ways our brains mislead us, like cognitive biases. Some examples are confirmation bias, the Dunning-Kruger effect, and the bias of normality that I mentioned in the last video. Then there are also logical fallacies, like the sunk cost fallacy, the false dichotomy, strawman fallacy, slippery slope, and so on. When I started to pay attention to my thinking, I noticed these types of patterns often. And once you notice them, you can kind of short circuit these defective thought patterns. If life is a Ninja Warrior obstacle course, then these biases and fallacies are like those rolling logs designed to trip us up if we're not skillful at overcoming them. So besides self-awareness, it takes some practice. I usually catch myself when scrolling through my news feed online, and I'll see an article headline or meme that makes me go, yes, see, that's how it really is. And I'm tempted to reshare the link without even reading the whole article or checking the source of their claims. This is a perfect example of confirmation bias, which is being less critical of ideas or opinions that confirm your pre-existing beliefs and assumptions. The content algorithms now capitalize on this bias by feeding us content that fits our worldview. This leads to an overconfidence in the certainty of these beliefs because of what's called the availability bias, which is a bias of judging the validity of an idea based on how easy it is to recall data that supports it. The algorithms also tend to show content that gets more clicks, and hence the prevalence of controversial clickbait titles that are designed to elicit strong emotions. This creates an information ecosystem in which true and nuanced knowledge doesn't spread and replicate as quickly. Instead, more extreme and biased viewpoints are selected for and propagated because they create the strongest emotional response, whether for or against, which drives more clicks. I'm worried that this trend is eroding the quality of civil discourse, which is essential for a functional democracy. Not that we're living in one of those in the US anyways, but hey, it's better than North Korea, right? Speaking of internet memes, I always thought it was interesting to think about how and where I focus the beam of my attention. And attention is different from vision, because I can focus my vision on anything external, as long as the lights are on. But with my attention, I can also focus it on internal constructs as well, like that embarrassing memory of the time my swimsuit fell off while tubing, or the raining tacos song playing on repeat in my head. And when I'm focusing on internal constructs, I'm usually not paying attention to what's happening in reality right now in the present moment. This is a mental habit I've had to work on, actually, being stuck in my head, though it's an interesting and colorful place in here. But I realized that the modern human-built environments that most of us grew up in are built to be predictable and stable, so they don't require our constant attention and alertness. I don't need to be on the lookout for deer tracks to hunt or tigers in the bush to flee from. What's cool about parkour is that it forces you to bring your full attention to the present moment. The more I'm stuck in my head, the less alert I am to the obstacles I'm moving through. So the same practice of getting out of my head and into my body and being more alert to my surroundings has helped me a lot in working with the subtle natural patterns of the land in farming. One of my teachers showed me how the wind will affect tree growth and shape, a process called wind flagging. And I can use this knowledge to orient my pig shelters to protect the pigs from the prevailing wind direction. I also noticed that conscious control of my focus is a skill I can practice and get better at, just like how training the parkour roll over and over makes it become second nature. Without that practice, my attention tends to get pulled in whatever direction the most novel stimulus is coming from. Squirrel, TikTok. But I've noticed that some of the most important information is the subtlest or driest. It doesn't call out loudly for our attention. The most important things to pay attention to don't usually have a multi-million-dollar marketing team working to grab your attention.
I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that.
And it's not always amusing and funny. So it's easy to miss out on the most important information without this skill of attention control. I suppose that's what some of the meditation stuff is about. It's practicing control of the beam of your attention, bringing it back to the present moment, to your breath, and so on. Building that mental muscle. My friend Corey has this cool practice of going into the woods to a sit spot and putting full attention on the sights, sounds, smells, and other sensations streaming in. Sometimes the internal voice will start to put words to our experience, interpretations, judgments, or just recalling memories from the past. The goal is to let go of those wordings because they originate from internal constructs. Instead, the aim is to open the aperture of awareness as fully as possible to this external living reality. So I found this sit spot idea is a good way of training the fundamentals. Anyways, I think my attention is getting distracted from the main thread here. Tools for building an accurate model of reality. And finally, tool number 3. The idea is practicing humility. Just like I do. I'm like the humblest person you'll ever meet.
I too am extraordinarily humble.
During my high school phase of questioning everything, one of the first things I had to learn was settling into not knowing. Being comfortable with the uncertainty of life.
The uncertainty principle. It proves we can't ever really know what's going on.
No longer was my existence wrapped in a comfy blanket of beliefs and certainties about the cosmic order. But instead I felt the vertigo of the deep and profound mystery that's beneath all knowledge and beliefs. I realized that no one really has all the answers, and that this process of seeking the truth and continually considering many points of view is a lifelong undertaking. It's like that line from the Tao Te Ching, when people know that they do not know, they can find their own way. Or that Zen Buddhism saying that says you can't fill a cup that's already full. So I try to empty my cup, acknowledge my own ignorance and adopt a beginner's mind. Like even all these ideas that I'm sharing now in these videos, I don't know any of it with 100% certainty. It's just theories that I've tested by applying them in my own life and gotten some positive results, which is why I'm sharing them. But I know that my map of reality is still very incomplete. It's full of blind spots and biases and ignorance. Some I'm aware of, but most I'm not. I'm just a broken, flawed human trying to find my way in a broken and fucked up world, just like everybody else. So I'm open to change any and all of my ideas based on compelling evidence and reason. Basically, I reserve the right to be respectfully wrong. What I'm trying to say is that an important part of an accurate model of reality includes a large area of the unknown. When I was a kid, I remember playing some open world video games like Grand Theft Auto, where you have a map of the game world, but it would all be blacked out at first. And as you explore the world, the map would be revealed in those places you explored. This is not a bad way of visualizing how we construct our models or maps of reality as we grow. We venture forth into the unknown realms of life and gradually illuminate them through experiences. We try new sports, we try different hobbies, we date different people, we literally travel the world, we explore jobs and business ideas.
All right, I got a bowl of cereal that's M&M's and Dr. Pepper. Over here.
And through this exploration, we're gradually building and refining our map. Yeah, life is just a video game to me. You gotta get those power-ups. Except what's missing in this visualization is that, in this reality, The unknown is not just out there at the periphery, but it's also in here. There's an unquenchable unknown within each and every person, place, thing, and idea, including inside ourselves. Even the boundaries between all these things are far from being fully understood. Just like how a toddler tests the boundaries of acceptable behavior with their parents, it's worthwhile to perform personal experiments to test the boundaries in our own model of reality, like the boundary between self and world. What's cool is with this stuff, we're not limited to just passively pondering these mysteries. We can do experiments and test our theories. And that's what makes life so fascinating. You know, you can just dig into the unknown in any direction you focus your awareness and just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's endlessly fascinating. Like, go us, having a curious brain able to basically do mental parkour in this infinite realm of possibilities and actually discover new things and then share and communicate those with others. Life is pretty sweet. So anyways, as useful as these models and maps are, it's important to always remember that the map is not the territory. To see through the representation and into the unique particularity of each individual that's presenting itself to you right now in the moment. Maladaptive behaviors like racism and bigotry happen when people treat others based on their preconceived notions or internal models, instead of allowing the mystery of the individual to express themselves. For the programmers in the crowd, it's outputting when you should be inputting. Now, what's the point of all these mental gymnastics again? Besides hawking my awesome MLM scheme, I mean business opportunity. What's the benefit of an accurate map? Well, the ultimate test of our mental map is, does it work? Does it get results? An important part of our map of reality is how we model the future, since that's inevitably where we're all headed. If my map is accurate, if it's true, then I can make more accurate projections of the future. This in turn enables me to navigate towards a more desirable future and avoid or creatively overcome any obstacles along the way. If I don't anticipate an obstacle coming at me, it's going to throw off my flow and kill my momentum. So training the skill of future modeling makes me better at doing parkour through life, which is much more fun than continuously running into things. In fact, this power of vision is actually incredible. It's almost like our superpower as a species. Not only do we model and respond to how reality is, but we can also model how reality could be, and then work out a plan to get from here to there, point A to point B. We can remake the world from our imagination. And like all superpowers, with great power comes great responsibility, as Uncle Ben would say. But once we get good at realizing our visions, then we can make some really cool shit. Like, imagine planting a willow tree and as it grows, guiding it along a scaffolding. And eventually we could create whole forests of epic jungle gym trees to climb and play on. Wouldn't that be a cool future to navigate towards? Now, it just so happens that scientists' future models predict an obstacle course of epic proportion that's hurtling towards humanity. In many ways, it's already here. So in the next couple videos, I'm going to take some time to examine some important trends in order to simulate some different possible future scenarios. And I'll also share some strategies that can hopefully help us navigate some of the more likely futures more smoothly. Okay, so now you've gotten a peek inside my head. And thank you for your attention. Come on back anytime.